Okay, so we'll be sending it in our private chat. All of the questions prior the session. Is that okay? Okay, we're live.
Yeah, can you just wait for one more minute? Then we'll begin at 5 p.m. sharp. All right. All right. It's 5 p.m. Let's get to it. All right. I hope everybody is ready for our next session on mental health. After the COVID 19 left most of the world's population stranded from their friends and family, mental health was thrusted into the spotlight. So this time we have more spectacular speakers lined up for you. They are Megan from Advocating Youth, Jeshra from Mind Matters Network, Leah from Kau Oketa, Dr. Valerie from Persatuan SLE Malaysia, and last but not least, Afzan, a mental health influencer and advocate. Our speakers will be taking a deeper dive into the links between COVID 19 and social media on mental health, why there shouldn't be any shame in asking for help, and the effects of untreated mental health disorders. Aizat, take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chris, for that wonderful welcoming remarks. So, good afternoon and welcome to the second session of No Holdbacks Health Symposium conducted by Charisma Movement in dealing with health taboo in Malaysia. So, with the pressing topic of mental health issue, together with me, I'm Isaac Hazli, the Educational Project Director for Charisma Movement, and I'll be a moderator today. Before we begin, just a couple of house rules. Audience, if you have any questions, anything at all, you can directly put your questions on the link to Slido that we will be given in the chat later. And others, you can click on the like button to upvote any of the questions that you would like to be answered as well. Then I'll be directing the questions to the speakers in the Q&A session later. All right, so without further ado, we want to get straight to the topic at hand today. So please rest assured, sit back and enjoy while we unravel this topic one by one with selected experts sharing their insights as well as experience in today's topic. But before we get into the session, just a little bit of context and main goal expected from this session as well. I think everyone is very well aware of how this pandemic has further exacerbated most of our mental health condition. And if anything, this pandemic, the couple of lockdowns in Malaysia has further aggravated our symptoms of anxiety and depression. Hence, in today's session, we would like to discuss more on the topic of mental health issue and why you shouldn't be ashamed of publicly speaking about it. And also in this session, we will be doing a conversation-based forum. And what will be covered in terms of the mental health issue in the status quo, like what happens currently, as well as the implementation in addressing mental health issues. So it will mostly be solution-centric discussion. All right, we'll move on to the speaker introduction. Today, we are joined by a list of very, very exceptional and experienced list of speakers who I will now introduce. First, we have is Afzan or Baban. Afsan was diagnosed with bipolar type 2 disorder in 2019. She discovered that she has been living with symptoms of bipolar almost her entire life without realizing it. And since her diagnosis, Afzan has been sharing her experience managing her condition and living relatively normal life with her social media handle, Babanology, on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. She started her advocacy to raise awareness on the importance of mental health, to encourage people to seek professional help as soon as they can and show people that life is possible even with mental condition. And in June 2021, Afsan became a certified mental health first aider and joined Yayasan Zuriat Care as the head of Camellia, which is campaign for mental illness inclusivity and awareness. Baban is an architect by profession. She is also a book, food, and also makeup enthusiast. We also have here Kathlia, or Kath, having co-founded 5 initiatives, including Kau Oketa, which is an organization focuses on teens' mental health as well as Connect Malaysia that aims to create student support groups for universities across Malaysia. Kathlia also has a podcast that highlights the importance of mental well-being, which is Listen to Mila, that is the title. And Kath wishes to do her best in educating on mental health awareness across Malaysia. She understands that Malaysia has a long way to go in eradicating stigma on mental illness and hopes the new generation can help progress the country further in this aspect. Together with us today, we also have Megan Yap, or Megan, from Advocating Youth Initiative. Megan is a law student under the University of London External Program, and Megan is currently spearheading Advocating Youth, which is a youth-led initiative powered by Fellow Parliament Malaysia. Some of their recent notable events are the MMHYC 2021, which is Youth Mental Health Conference, and the MSPAC 2021, which is Suicide Prevention Campaign. Megan was also previously the representative for P138, Kota Melaka for Parlimen Wanita Muda, championing for the decriminalization of suicide and for an independent and effective IPCMC. And we also have Dr. Valerie Jacks from Persatuan SLA Malaysia. Dr. Valerie is a clinical psychologist with Integrated Psychology Network. With more than 30 years of experience, she is skilled in psychological assessment and therapeutic interventions. In support of the community at large, Valerie is actively involved in giving talks and sharing experiences while supporting non-governmental organizations like Persatuan SLE Malaysia, as she sees the need to assist the growth of tomorrow's future generation. And last but not least, we have Joshua Nathaniel Devon. Joshua is a year two medical student in Ames University. He is the head of marketing of Mind Matters Network, a youth-led organization supported by National Coalition for Mental Wellbeing who promotes by youth, for youth, and with youth. Mind Matters Network has recently launched the first ever youth mental handbook focusing on mental health illness. He is also a marketing and publicity executive for Asian Youth Organization Malaysia. Joshua is also a university ambassador and IT and website executive of Malaysian Students Surgical Society. He has also represented Malaysia as an inventor for KLESF and Young Innovate in 2014 and 2015. All right, I would like to first thank all of the speakers and the audience for joining us for today's discussion. Hopefully, everyone will get fruitful insights out of this discussion. And now I would like to start off with some introductory questions that I will pass on to the panelists. Um, Basically, when it comes to talking about mental health issue, we are very much aware that in our community, specifically in our society, specifically in Malaysia, the stigma surrounding mental health condition often leads young people or humans in general to shy away from seeking the help and support that they need, which eventually leaves these vulnerable people to face discrimination and exclusion as well. So even if majority of us like know that mental health conditions can have a significant impact on young people's development and also integration into society, I would like to address one question to all of the panelists today. Why do you think mental health issue is still taboo, and why do you think it should be addressed more in our society? Maybe any one of you can start first.
Yeah. Can I start?
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. So, I okay. I am not a medical expert, but I have experience with mental illness because I am living with bipolar disorder at the moment. Um, and I remember when I was first diagnosed, I was afraid. I was afraid that this diagnosis would impact my career, it would impact my relationships, because I didn't know what I was getting into. So I think um, the topic of mental health is still quite taboo in our society because of fear of the unknown. We don't know a lot about mental illness, about mental health, because it is not openly talked about compared to diabetes, compared to cancer, compared to all other physical illness or disorders that we can that are being talked about here in Malaysia. So I think the first thing that we should do is to get over the fear of the unknown. Um, it should be talked about more, because without knowledge, that is when our fear manifests into something even worse, which is judgment, prejudice, and a whole lot of other things, which is why we tend to look, to look at people with mental illness, people with mental health issues as well, as strange, I guess, for lack of a better word. Um, but yeah, I think the main reason that the subject is still taboo is because we are afraid of the unknown. We don't know something, so we are afraid of it. But maybe other panelists can add to that.
Yes, Mama. You know what? I totally agree with what you say because I feel, especially young people nowadays, people like us, very young people, they are very shy from seeking help. They are. I know they need support, but they are very shy. It's not because of they are not confident enough to ask for help. They are just very afraid to face the discrimination they want to be dealing with. Because whenever you say, okay, like Baban, you yourself, you were very graceful, very graceful, very confident enough to come out, be strong enough to show everyone how you are. So many people tend to not do that because of discrimination they're gonna face, especially in the society, right? They have a very stereotyped view on mental health, where when someone who has a mental health issue, right, they are kind of a dangerous, or you can get the mental health like contagious, that kind of things, because people are not well educated enough that mental illness is not some kind of a joke. It is a real deal. People need to give more more importance, more significance towards it. So I totally agree with what you said. We It's just a stereotype, skewed perspective of people nowadays, and they just don't want to go through. They just don't want to go through the unknown. Yeah, that's what I totally agree with Baban as well. It's just that's the thing nowadays, like the discrimination. That's the thing.
Can I add on to that?
Yeah, great.
Yeah, definitely, Kathy can
Yeah,
help.
so I feel that I mean, thanks Joshua and Boban, but I agree, and I also feel that mental health issue is still taboo in Malaysia for two reasons. One is that I think it's an Asian thing. Like this is just my personal opinion, right? So I think coming from a very collectivist society, we expect everyone to always be perfect all the time, always having to look like we are kept together all the time. Like if you show like a little bit of negative emotion, like you show sadness or anger, and then it's like everyone's like whoa, and like we expect to work and not take breaks and stuff like that. So I think that's why when someone says like, hey, I think I have depression, then everyone's like, whoa, oh my god, it's depression and stuff like that. That's
Yeah.
one. And I think the second thing comes with the language, because when I think it's the Malaysian language. So like when you say mental, it just means like physical mental, right? But in Malay it means like gila. And that's how like it's associated. When you say suicide, you say commit suicide. What other terms do you use the word commit to? It's just like commit murder, commit a crime. So I think that also adds on to the stigma. So why should it be addressed more? Because I think that's the first step to eradicating the fear that Baba mentioned, right? If we
Yeah.
don't know, if we don't address it, if we don't talk about it like how we are doing in this forum, then I don't think we will ever will have anyone like come up and talk about it. Yeah, that's all for me.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I can add on, if that's okay. So, wait, doctor,
Yeah,
do you want to go
definitely.
first? Okay, so I think for me, being involved in mental health advocacy, right, it also taught me a lot about there's this like don't talk and don't tell policy when it comes to mental health, and also like there's a lot of shame attached when we want to share about our mental health journey, right? So I think like just now what everyone mentioned before, there are a lot of presuppositions when it comes to mental health. So for example, people think that you're unpredictable, or like you might get violent, or like you might ruin the mood. So that is what I've always heard people talk about my housemate at that time because she was having depression. Um, and but I think most of us like we prefer to kind of run away from the problem than to actually face it head on, right? But then that's the problem, lah, because Joshua also mentioned that this is reality, kan? And if we don't like face it, then it doesn't solve the issue as well. So I think like why it should be addressed more in society is because the more we talk about mental health, the more it gets normalized in everyday conversations. So for example, this platform also helps a lot in encouraging the public to be more open about the mental health journey, lah. So yeah, so that's all I have to add on because everyone said so many things with this. So Doctor can pass to you.
My turn to add on to this topic of taboo. This topic of taboo, the key word is mental. I think Kath said that. And in our environment, nobody sees the word health. They only see the word mental. The minute they see the word mental, they get mental block, as if mental means crazy, orang gila, and the word mental means you are at fault. The pointing the finger out and blaming a person as if they bring shame to their family, they bring bad things in the environment to others, and therefore the minute the word mental comes in, I think most people become mental. They go crazy just with the word. So it's unfortunately a word that has been tied in with a sense of craziness, in a sense, or in a sense of taboo, as you say, or stigma. And in the past, it was not called mental health, it was called mental illness. And so the focus was on being ill. And therefore, everyone again tied the crazy person with illness. And therefore, stay away. If not contagious, you'll catch it. And, we don't want to be around it. And if we have it in our family, we lock it up and cage it and hide it in the room and don't let the person out. And so we grew up with environments like this. But it's great to see young people come out and want to talk about it, because in my work, I think it's the young people who are saying, hey, we need help. But the problem is their parents and the older generation say, no, 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 hide it, keep it behind, it's stigma, it's bad. But what they don't realize is that just as much as you get a fever or cold and then you run to the doctor and say, I need help, help me with something, they don't see that the minute the stress starts to come in, that they need to run to the counselor, to the psychologist, to talk it out, to get it out of their system, to understand it, so that they stay healthy in their mind and in their behaviors. And in the whole idea of early interventions, it means we will never get to the place of mental illness. We will not allow the progression of something within the mind to develop to a place where it is breakdown. And this is something that people need to understand, because most onset of breakdowns happen at the later teens. But today, the degree of childhood illnesses and disorders has increased in the diagnostic manual. And if we are looking to that, then we're saying that the degree of breakdown in children is even younger, and we need to do something to prevent this. So we need to remove that stigma and that taboo, and say from the earliest stage, if we start to do preventive work and we learn to be more healthy in our minds and our mindsets and our view of life, then we will have healthy future and healthy society. But because of stigma and taboo, we are living in quite a toxic environment, and this toxic environment needs to change.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for the personal insight on the issue itself. I think it's true that most of you mentioned about how mental health stigma refers to societal disapproval, or when society like places shame on people who live with a mental illness, and now we truly understand how the social stigma and the discrimination can make mental health problems even worse in our community, or like in our society. So yeah, I totally agree in terms of like more exposure and more awareness are definitely super important in dismantling the stigmatization of mental health issue itself. Echoing to the question earlier, during this earlier during this pandemic, right, with a lot of like lockdowns in Malaysia specifically, we had like low levels of physical activity, like very limited physical activities, and we know that this can have negative effects in our mental well-being, especially in the early days of total lockdown, the blanket lockdown, and also like the self quarantine that can further cause continuous effects on an individual's mental health. And personally speaking, I would say that one question that I would like to address: how have you personally been impacted mentally as a result of the lockdown in the pandemic. Yeah. Maybe Kath,
Okay.
you can start first. Oh, yeah, Joshua, I can start
Oh,
first. Yeah.
okay. To be honest, right? This pandemic was totally unexpected. I'm pretty sure to every single person. So it literally disrupted all of our daily lives. For me, right, I tend to be the very active person, outgoing person, everyday jogging, swimming. I tend to keep myself very occupied. So I, I tend to keep myself very occupied, so I don't think about anything else out of the ordinary to keep my mental health to on the right track. The more I exhaust myself, like doing physical activity and all, it kind of releases. Uh, Technically, in medical terms, it releases endorphins and so on. So it helps you actually to reduce stress and so on. So that's how I keep myself in check. So when this pandemic hit, it was a total game changer for me. I was so stressed up. You know what? In classes, you got to look at the same laptop all day, and it's not for like 2-3 hours. I'm pretty sure Megan, Kat, you guys been sitting on your laptops for what? Easily up to 8 hours, right? And hearing lectures and so on. It was really tiring, and you can't go out, you can't go talk to people, you don't have a social life. I know, for me, I stayed with my parents. Yeah, it's family and all, but honestly, I for 3 months seeing the same faces again and again, I kind of like, okay, at this point I was thinking like, okay, what should I talk with them? I'm running out of ideas to talk and so on. So that kind of things all came into my mind. So it was kind of not kind of like, it was really stressful for me at that moment. I didn't have any stress relievers at that time. Sitting locked up in your room for 8 hours, it was really tiring. But when you compare that back to campus, right, when you're outgoing and all, it's on a different scale itself already. Walking towards class, that is a different thing. Sitting in lectures, chit chatting with your friends, that's a different thing. Getting scolded by the lecturers is a different thing itself. That is joy in that itself. So being being from a social kind of person, social outgoing person, became a very sedentary kind of person sitting in front of a laptop. Really made my life a bit turned my life upside down lah. So that's what happened to me during COVID hit. What do you guys think? What are your personal opinion?
Yeah, maybe Kath, you want to go next?
Okay. So for me, I've always thought about this during the pandemic, which is like I my family is pretty toxic, so I was thinking about like those who have like toxic families, or like those who suffer from domestic abuse. How do they stay indoors during this pandemic? That would be like a terrible time for them. In fact, like all the hotlines for domestic violence increase so much during this time. But eventually, I managed to run away from home. And one, so yeah, some of my mental health was like that. And then one good thing is that when I ran away, I stayed in my friend's place and stuff like that. And I got a job, just a volunteering job to help those who are in need of basic needs like food and water and stuff like that during the pandemic. So I occupied my time doing that instead, and that helped a lot. So as I think one thing about the pandemic, I mean, there's a lot of negative things, definitely. But one thing for sure, like, I feel that was the first time I saw everyone really come together. Like, the whole kita jaga kita thing. I mean, we weren't
Yeah.
supposed to do that, but everyone did. And that was very nice to see. So yeah, that was for my mental health.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kate, for sharing your personal story. Anyone else? Does anyone want to share your personal experience? Yeah, maybe
Yes.
Hassan.
See, I was diagnosed in September 2019, and I think, if I remember correctly, the first lockdown was in March 2020. So that was not even 6 months after I was diagnosed. Um, in a way, the lockdown has was a blessing for me, because I was at a stage where I did not want to socialize at all. I didn't want to meet anyone, not even my colleagues at work. So the lockdown, in a way, gave me the time, gave me the space to heal myself from within, to focus on myself. And it forced me to face my own demons, my internal demons. And you know how just now we say we always tend to run away from our problems. We don't want to face it head on. So during that time, I had no other option because I was just alone at home. I mean, I stay by myself. Um, and I had no one to to talk about or to process whatever was going on within me. And 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 like I said, it forced me to face my own demon, to figure out what I should do, figure out what's the next course of action for me to take, how do I take better care of my own mental health, how do I manage my mental disorder, because there's because I have bipolar disorder, so I most probably will have to live with it for the rest of my life. So I needed to learn how to manage it, not just my condition, but also my relationships, my career, and my life in general. Because I mean, one person is never just one thing. I mean, I may be someone with bipolar disorder, but that doesn't define me. I am an architect by profession. I am someone's daughter. I have responsibilities towards my parents. So there are a lot of things that I had to juggle. But at that time during the lockdown, it gave me the time and space to address every single one of it without any interruption, without any outside factors to meddle with whatever thoughts I had going on at the time. And please bear in mind that when the reason I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder was because at that time I was already having suicidal thoughts, and that forced me, that scared me. Um, so I decided to seek help, and then 6 months, not even 6 months after that, the pandemic happened. I thought that would be like, I was terrified really, because I would be all by myself. There would be no one else. No one could come and visit. But thankfully, it it was an eye-opening situation for me, because yeah, it I I had no other choice but to deal with whatever was going on inside me. Um, this is still hard for me to talk about. Um, so bear with me if I sound a little shaky when I talk about things. But yeah, it gave me the time, the space, and the perspective to look at my life in general, to look at every single thing that I had going on. And the pandemic, yeah, granted, for some people it may have the opposite effect. In fact, I think for most people it had the opposite effect, where people became depressed, people became anxious. I think statistics for anxiety, people with anxiety just went sky high, I think, at the time. But for me, it was a blessing, because I had time for myself without any outside factors having an effect on it.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Robin. I'll actually add on to that. So I think for me, right, last year was actually one of like the darkest moments in my life, actually. So I was actually okay from the start, when everything went online. I really appreciated the fact that we didn't have to wake up early to dress up and to like touch up on appearance, before going to school, before going to college. But then what happened was like everything spiraled down. So I'm like, yeah, sure. So what happens is I'm more social in person, and I wasn't living with my family. So I'm from Malacca, but then when I furthered my studies, I moved up from Malacca when I was 18, and I've been living in KL ever since. So what happened was, at that time I was living in PJ at a very very small studio. It's around like 500 to 600 square feet with two other people. So you can imagine how compact the place is, and it's so small, right? That once you go in, you can straight away see the kitchen, and there's no ventilation at all. And then after the kitchen, then there's this study table, and then if you want to walk to your room, right, you have to suck in your stomach like that, and you have to walk past the tables. So it was that small, and as we all know, PJ was classified as a red zone last year for 5 months. So I was there, at home for 5 months without going out. It was like prison, honestly. There we only had one window, and it was only at our bedroom. So it was like very suffocating. You know that there's no place to actually also hang clothes. So we have to move everything into the bedroom on aircon and actually dry it. So it's quite pricey also. And the reason why we actually live there, me and my housemates, is because it's very near college. So and on top of that, kan, I had my first year law exams. I was working part time, and then I was also questioning my faith at that time. So I was Christian, I'm still Christian now, but that time was just a very confused Christian. I was doubting my relationships, and I got really, really, really anxious. So we had like video calls, cause uni kan. So we still have to go online and talk and stuff like that. So I got very, very anxious. Whenever like we had video calls, I had to practice what to say beforehand, and I would like play the whole scenario in my head, and I will like anticipate, what they will ask, and then what should I answer, and then it just goes on and on like that before I have the courage to actually go online. So it was really, really bad. And then after things start to get a bit better, I went out a bit, and it's not so bad now, but I still get very anxious speaking. So I'm like, Baba, sometimes when I talk, I also stutter, also shake a bit. But it's getting better now, and it's really a journey lah. So when it comes to mental health, right, we cannot expect to get better like just that instant. When we go for therapy, when we meet our therapists, right, it's not like that instant kind of thing, but it's more of a journey kind of thing. Yeah, so I think so that's for me. Doctor, do you want to add on?
Yeah, Doctor, you can add on.
Yeah. Well, I think like Baban, I had a different, a more positive encounter with the onset of COVID, because life sometimes is quite stressful. So when we had to force into a lockdown, it was suddenly so quiet, so nice, not having to do too many things. Okay, we comply. They just ask us to sit quietly. But it was also a time that my mother was very ill, and so it gave us all the opportunity at home to take care of her. It was a few weeks, I think about a month later, she passed away. So it was helpful for all of us at home, because it meant that we didn't have to be running to the office or doing work, but we could all be attending at home. So we felt that grateful actually for the time, that it was quite good at home with the family. But I must say that all my work at that point in time turned online. I didn't become less busy. Um, but it's not like it was my first time to do online work. I was already doing online work prior to this, so it wasn't too bad for me or too difficult, the adjustment and the balance. But what was difficult was turning physical training, where we meet people in groups and rooms and doing things, turning those into online sessions, because it required a lot more reorganizing the mind. How do we do something? Thinking things that we don't normally think about, to be able to engage with people online in groups. And breakout groups and facilitating and things like that. I think that became a little bit more challenging, but I think in time we all learned how to do things and manage it. But generally, for me, work from home also meant working more and working longer hours. Where last time maybe we have some moments driving on the road or moving from one place to another, which meant a bit more physical movements. Here it was sitting in a position for long periods of time. And if I didn't learn to stand up and stretch and do some, movements around, then I'd be stuck with neck ache and backache and things like that. So yes, it required a shift in how we take care of ourselves differently with the onset of COVID. Now, there are many people who went through a difficult time with the mental health issues as well. But I think a lot of people started to use those hotlines because the degree of violence at home or the pressures of people at home increased. But I must say that that's not the kind of work that impacted me. For me, it's the same kind of clients who would come. different people who actually come into a session don't want just a quick answer at this point, or just quick outlet, which is what happens a lot on the phone lines and hotlines. But people who come in to work longer term in being able to understand themselves. Yeah, so it is difficult challenge for different people. And I think what Megan says about space, I think space was one of the greatest challenges for people and families who are caught in. And if you young people already were affected to that degree, imagine the small children who can't sit still and need to, shift around and play, and they have their parents who have to be online working. It increased the level of stress for the children even more than the others. And then a lot of people started to say, oh, the child is becoming too addicted to the computer, too addicted to the gadgets. But the reality was that was their outlet to play with their friends and to engage with their friends. And, you needed to think beyond just being addicted to a gadget, and when there were no other outlets as well. So these are many, many challenges that people face during the times of COVID. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I think I resonate the most with Yeshua and also Megan in terms of like the frustration in online learning, and I also started my college. I started my uni with virtual learning, and I'm still doing online learning currently. But thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your personal experience in handling issue of loneliness in a sense in the recent lockdowns. And I believe that you guys are doing amazing, and you guys are going to keep doing amazing. So I would like to specifically direct this question to Afsan Baban, since you've had like experience overcoming the shame and overcoming the stereotype about having mental illness. How did you overcome the self judgments as well as stereotypes from the society to talk about it publicly? And as informed, I would say that you also have your own platform, Babanology, that also addresses more awareness on mental health issue for other people as well. So how did you find the courage and the space for your own vulnerability to transform your own pain into a positive message for others as well? Yeah.
I every time I want to post something, every time I put a new video on YouTube, every time I do that, I have to find the courage every single time. It's not just a one-off thing where I just, oh, okay, I can do this, and then everything goes smoothly. No, every single time I want to do it, every time I want to share a little bit of myself, this vulnerability where I have to be vulnerable, it's scary. In fact, I I always have to debate whether I want to show just the bright side of my life, because yes, it's true, I want to show people that life is possible, having a career is possible even with a mental disorder. But at the same time, I also want to bring forth the dark side of mental illness, but or mental disorders. But how do I do that without exposing too much of myself, without showing the times where I experience depressive episodes? How do I do that? Because when I get into a depressive episode, I wouldn't even have the energy to turn on my phone, let alone to record myself in that episode. So it's I guess it's a matter of finding the balance between I mean, it's necessary actually to be afraid, because then only the courage will come. um but again, it's not easy. There are still times when I myself would be self judgmental. I would criticize myself. I would think like, okay, if I post this out, if I share this, what would others think about me? It's an ongoing process. Uh so how do I find the courage? Well, I guess I guess I go back to the reason I started my advocacy. Okay, to do that, let me share a little bit of my experience getting diagnosed. I was having suicidal thoughts, so I went to a government facility to seek help. But the first doctor's appointment given to me was 3 months from the date that I first visited the clinic. I went in September, and the first doctor's appointment given to me was in December. I was already having suicidal thoughts. So if I had waited, I don't even want to think what would have happened to me if I had actually waited to get treatment or for that first doctor's appointment in the government facility. I mean, this is by no fault of theirs, because I understand that there is a shortage of mental health professionals in the government sector. And I was lucky. I had the option and I could afford to seek private mental health care. So I decided to do that. And when I discovered that I had bipolar disorder, I wanted to make sure, like, okay, this happened to me. Maybe I can stop it from happening to somebody else. Maybe because I am now 40 years old, and I was diagnosed in 2019. I was 38, but I have been living almost all my life with experiencing symptoms of bipolar disorder, and didn't know about it. So I thought I should do something. I should talk about it so that people would seek help as early as possible. Because just like cancer, there are stages: stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So if somebody gets the help they need as early as possible, then maybe they wouldn't have to go through what I went through. I had to have suicidal thoughts to actually push me to get the help I needed. Um, so I always go back to that. I always go back to why, the reason why I started my advocacy, and that gives me the courage every single time. I'm always afraid to share a bit of myself to others, because it's like exposing the skeletons in my closet, things that I don't even share with my family members sometimes. But I believe what I'm doing is important, as small as my efforts may be. But if I can help at least one person to go get the treatment they need, then I think it's worth it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to
Dr.
respond
Sari?
to
Yeah.
Laban.
Yeah.
First of all, I think you're very brave to have done this and to share
Thank
this.
you.
I'm not a believer, as most people are, that when a person has a breakdown or thoughts like this, that this is for life and that that's who you are and what you are. I just believe that it means we have been living a life in a particular way that doesn't match who you are as a person. What is your potential and the gifts that you have in your life, and perhaps the imposition from the world outside, whether it came from family or from work and the environment we live in, which is actually quite toxic, tells us then that we have to forget ourselves and live that life the way that expectation is. And this
Hmm.
then makes the mind go off, makes negative thinking, such as suicidal thoughts, come into the head, because suicidal thoughts are just a clue that something inside is not working well.
Hmm.
So it doesn't mean a person has suicidal thoughts that they're going to kill themselves, but
Yeah.
it's a point that just says something is not right. So I believe that the mind is very creative in telling us lots of clues about how life is to be, or what is it really that we need in our life. And sometimes we don't hear. So I see some of the chat, we talk about the negative thoughts in the head, the very critical on ourselves and what goes on in the mind. And often I think that these are internalized into our lives, which came from the outside world. And that outside world begins with our parents, our home environment, our families in the background, which are sometimes quite toxic. And it then gets expanded into expectations at school, in institutions, and all of this. And when that's being imposed, eventually a child doesn't know, they just take it in. And by the time you're a teenager, it turns internal to the point that we begin to believe this is what the we are supposed to be. And then we become critical on ourselves, which actually is the opposite of what we need. But nobody tells us different, and we continue in that way. So it's quite amazing that you could tahan so much and go on till 40, you know. And many people break down sooner, you know. So it just says you got a lot of strength inside there to be able to go on and keep on at it, you know. So this is the difference. A lot of people think that just because you have a breakdown that you're weak, but actually the reality means that you're quite strong in being able to hold things in and contain things. And unfortunately, it's not the way where we have to hold it in. And the sooner we realize and let it go, then your life can turn around. So I often think that it's just a clue that says your body is saying, I can't continue to live the next 40 years of my life like this. This strategy doesn't work. We have to change and we have to find a new one. So the same thing goes out for any person out there. The minute we start to realize that being imposed upon by what we grow up in, that home container, that the school environment, our politics, all of it put together, that environment itself, children have no power to control. And today's children are saying we're living in a toxic world, environmentally as well, and saying something need to change. And it's the adults who need to shift that mindset. But it's not happening. So by the time we become teenagers with a bit more realization, and young college students like number of you here, your realization begins to be conflicted. Am I supposed to live this way or that way? And then how to go? And when you keep pushing and then you cannot, one day you break. So the points of breakdown are actually just clues in the path of life that says life is not like this. Life is not to be lived negatively and unhappily. Life is about enjoyment and interest and growing things, you know. And I see all of you have taken where you come from and what are challenges and turned it into something to grow. And I think that's amazing, you know, when people can do things like that. That just says the power of the human being and the power of the sense of creativity within an individual. It doesn't matter, you know, what people think from the outside. So, you know, to understand illness and to understand breakdown, we must take it more as clues that people are, you know, we don't become scared and say, oh my God, don't think like that. That's the worst thing we can tell anyone, because nobody purposely thinks negative things. You know, nobody purposely puts thoughts in their head. It's as if we are just creating something inside, and nobody asked to feel a particular way. But our bodies are taking, and something's happening, and we don't spend enough time trying to figure out what are those clues, you know? And when we can begin to see that, hey, that's speaking to us in a different way and is saying something, what is that something? And we try to understand it differently, then you begin to see the potential of the gift of the individual that can come out and shine. Because everyone, every human being has that great potential to turn that life around. But to do that, we also need very much supportive environments. And sometimes that living alone, as you say, is quiet because you're living away from the environment that can be imposing as well. So it's not on the individual, it's about how we interact around us that makes life come about. So when we people can share more about what happens to them, then perhaps we can all start to think differently and say, hey, what is it that it's saying? What is it saying different? How can we do it different? And very often, those negative things that hurt you in your head are things that we need to pay attention to, because its purpose is to tell us something, but maybe not so directly what we think it is. And sometimes the actions we need to take are to counter it and do the opposite. And when we can do this is like your rebellious teenager. Parents say do A, I say no, I'm doing the opposite of A. So this becomes the internal battle, and when we can fight that, somehow we no longer stay at the extreme ends, and we can come and become integrated in ourselves and allow ourselves to grow in that way. So yeah, so when I hear what you say, it takes a lot of courage. And so it just says that the power is inside the individual, and how do we look at that and build from that potential and grow from there. I think that's really something. Yeah.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
just to clarify, I actually had several breakdowns throughout my entire life, but the one in 2019 was particularly triggering for me. Up to the point that I was having suicidal thoughts. I didn't want to die per se, but I just felt like life had no longer had meaning. I didn't want to
Meaning,
live.
yes.
I didn't. Yeah. So and that was what pushed me to go, because I was scared. I was like, why am I thinking of death? This is not me. This is just so this it was scary for me. So I said, okay, that's it.
Yes.
I had to do something about it. I
Yeah.
cannot just sit there and just not do anything. I had to do something. I had to be responsible for myself. So I
Yes.
had so I went and got the help that I needed. I'm still on medication, by the way. But yeah, ever since then I've learned a few things on how to better manage my bipolar disorder, even during depressive episode, during hypomanic episodes. I learned to recognize the triggers, I learned to recognize the symptoms, and also how to manage it so that I can still live a fulfilling life. So
Yeah.
the point is that even with a mental disorder, you can still have a meaningful life. And
Yes.
that is what drives me in my advocacy, because I just don't want people to think that having a mental illness or mental disorder or mental health issues, whatever you call it, I don't want people to think that it's the end of the road. I don't want people to think that that's it. You can no longer function in life. You have to be hospitalized all the time. That may not be necessarily true.
In fact, you are living proof of that, because most people would have run and hide away with the stigma of it, but you have come out, and that's what I mean by say you fight the opposite. You challenge it, you bring it out there, you say I'm not afraid, and I put it out there. I learn about it, I face it, I learn the terminology around it, and then I recognize it and I do something about it. This is
Yep.
what I mean when I say we do the opposite and we come in and face it, and eventually
Yes.
you integrate and you go forward. So it's great, it's really great.
Yeah. So
Yes.
even if people think that mental illness is contagious, well, I can say that the only thing contagious about me is my smile.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Baba, and thank you so much, Doctor, for that wonderful insights for us all. And I also believe that people with life experiences like Afsan herself, who chooses to speak about it, like about mental illness publicly, do so because they want to help others and want to destigmatize whatever mental health challenge they are living with. And also I believe that a personal connection to someone with life experience can actually change a person's perspective on that as well. And it is like super important for us to connect with experienced people, because people who can share their life experience with others, they have been engaged with therapy, and they have like most likely processed their own feelings, their own self-judgment and thoughts about their mental health issues. And yeah, thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for that wonderful insights. And uh, so, talking about like sharing our experiences and all that, I would like to address this next question to students here, Joshua, Megan, and Kat, me myself. So, for almost 2 years of online classes, we've been hearing a lot of issues with depression and how online classes further exacerbate students' mental well-being, in which I personally agree. However, I would like to twist this question. Some people might think there is an advantage of online classes. So, what is your opinion on this as a student yourself? Do you think it further aggravates your mental health condition, or has online classes benefited you? Which one does more harm than good? Yeah, maybe Yeshua, I can start first.
Okay. You know what? Online class. You know what? How do I say? It's like two sides of the coin. You know, there are its own benefits and there are its own downsides. And let's talk about the benefits a bit here first. You know what? The benefits, right? The lectures are recorded, so that was a really good benefit for me. You can access it whenever you want, at whatever time do you want, and plus you want to miss some classes like you're not feeling well and so on, it's okay, you have recorded slides, recorded classes, so it's great. Yeah. Look, Megan said she'll play her lectures at 1.75 speed. Yeah, I play at two times speed just to finish it through, recap and so on. That was a really great blessing. And another one is what? Because of online, right? You can just email your lecturers whatever time you want, and most of the time they reply to us. So I felt really, really great on that. Although emailing like 12 o'clock midnight, there are some lecturers who reply to me back, and they have no issues in that because they are not that
Mhm.
tired compared to face-to-face classes and so on. So it is fun. But when it comes to downsides, right? How do I say? Um, you don't have interaction between the lecturer like how you used to be. Because when you send through emails and all, right? How do I say? For me, the sense of emotion is really important. That your emotion, your facial reaction, your body language, it plays a really big role, especially when you're in online class, right? And for my batch, there's 154 of us, and on the gallery view, because it's going to be on Zoom, and after your slides are on there, you're going to see about what, five faces there? Not more than that, just only five faces. So you can only see the reaction of five faces. But when you're in the lecture, right, I'm 100% sure my lecturer, right, she can recognize all 154 of us and can easily spot out anyone, even at the back, anyone sitting like, oh, I'm pretty sure he doesn't understand with that facial reaction. So you get
Mhm.
that kind of, how do I say, that kind of attention. And when you interact with the lecturer, for me it kind of gives the happiness, especially when you get scoldings from the lecturer. I don't know why some people tell like, oh, I get scolding, I'm kind of depressed and all. I'm like, it kind of boosts me more. Like when I don't know something, when a lecturer scolds me, I'm like, oh my god, okay, next class I have to know it so I can explain to the lecturer and not get a beating in front of the whole 154 of us. So that is me. But when it became online and all, it was kind of like sitting on a computer for like what we Megan and Kat were saying, like 8 hours, 10 hours, just sitting over a computer. The lecturer will be talking and talking. At one point, you get bored, you get stressed, like you don't understand a single thing. It's kind of like the environment itself. It turns to a toxic environment, where it's like a chain reaction. When you start being bored, when you start being stressed, then it continues and continues like a chain reaction. That happens. But in campus, that does not happen. Where you have roommates and all, like my
Mhm.
roommates are a real boon for me. Whenever I feel down, they're like, okay, Joshua, what is going on? Let me tell. You want to talk about the lecturer? Come on, let's talk. So you know what? That is a sense of connection where you connect with people and all. You lose that in your online classes. Even in Zoom, I know in video call you can talk and all, but you don't have that kind of quality talk, the quality interaction where you had face to face. So for me personally, I had a lot of ups, but for me it's close to more of a down because I'm a social outgoer. So if you compare it to how do I say, people who is very keeping them to themselves, kind of like a how do I mention, very not antisocial, like people who tend to keep good to themselves. So I'm pretty sure
Mhm.
for them it's kind of a better way because they don't have to interact often and so on. But people like Megan, Kat, and myself, we tend to go on the downside more, I feel. Well, what do you think, Kat and Megan?
Yeah, Megan, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So, for me, I'm actually in my third year of uni, and like just now Isaac mentioned, I actually learn long distance. So my uni is in UK, but then I get to study here lah. So 3 years local. So what happens is for me, it actually is more of a plus. So I feel like it actually helped my mental health a lot. Although I'm a social person, I feel like online classes, I prefer online classes than going to physical classes. But that doesn't mean that I don't like going out also lah. So I think for me, right, I'm coming from a perspective of a course, right, that actually does not require us to do any coursework and stuff like that because it's 100% exam based. So what happens is everything happens at our own pace. We watch lectures. I mean, I go to class, but I also like rewinding like lectures, and I listen to 2 or like 1.75 speed. I feel that that really helps with my concentration lah. So yeah, so like for us, the only stress that we get right throughout the whole course is actually during exams, which is like two times every year, and that requires us to like pay. So we have to pay lembaga, we have to pay our school, and we have to pay the UK board. So it's like 3 different parties. And what I used to do is what I'm still doing now is also because I work part time, and I sometimes pay a portion of my school fees. Not because like my family can't afford, it's because like my parents wanted me to attend another uni. And when I came to KL, it's like out of my own decision. So I wanted to be like, okay, you know what? Because this is my own thing, so I will pay for some of my fees. So that is what happened. And then when everything's online, exams are also online. And while there is this kind of thing that I wake up, I look at the computer, and then before I sleep, I also, am on screen. But then overall, I think that the financial burden is kind of lifted because when everything's online, right, I don't have to pay lembaga for fees. I don't have to pay for my Malaysian uni fees also because for their tuition and stuff like that. So actually for me, yeah, there are times where I actually burn out once, like really, really bad burnout. So after a call, I remember I slept for around like 16 hours straight. So like didn't do anything, didn't wake up for lunch also. So I just slept. And then I had very bad Zoom fatigue. So but that was before where I knew I forgot not forgot, but like I forgot how to how to draw boundaries when it comes to studying, and everything is just mixed up. But then now I learned like it's adapting as part of the new norm anyway. So I think for me, right, actually online is a plus in terms of financial wise. Yeah. So maybe Kev has another POV. So what do you think?
Yeah.
Well, I'm also studying internationally, Megan, like you. So for me, it's Australia, and Australia has been closing their borders since the pandemic still until now, and so I've been studying online. I hated it. I hated it because the only reason why I wanted to go Australia is to experience the whole campus and all of that, right? So once you can't go, and then when you go see online, you'll see all these people having like they have like orientation, they have like all this freebies, all this stuff, and then you feel like you're missing out a lot. And doing online classes made it really hard for me to find friends because when else are you gonna like interact if it's not like in campus, right? So yeah, so personally for me, I really don't like online classes, but there's this perspective that I never realized before. It's not for me, but a lot of my friends who are differently abled, they who are disabled, they prefer having online class because it's more accessible to them. So I've never thought about this, like, oh, like now all the events are finally online. They were like, I can finally access it. There's alternative text and stuff like that. And I've never like considered that. So that's definitely also a pro to online classes. Like what Yeshua mentioned about class recordings and stuff like that. Yeah, so that's definitely also pros. But for me, I personally don't like online classes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Megan. Thank you so much, Kat. Thank you so much, Yeshua, for sharing your personal experience, like sharing your personal opinion and discussion. And personally speaking, as a student myself, I completely agree when it comes to online classes. It definitely does benefit me in terms of technological assessment, like how we can actually refer back to our recording of the lesson, and also in terms of like group work and all that. We no longer have to set a time, or like we no longer have to set a place for us to discuss. We can just hop into a quick call and all. But I think I would also agree that this is like the very reason why students feel a lot more lonely than they usually were, because there's like very limited physical activities that might be a challenge for them as well. And so talking about mental health condition per se, like maybe some of us might be curious on how do we actually get clinically diagnosed and to check our mental well-being. So Dr. Valerie, as a psychologist yourself, could you explain more on what should young people do if they want to go for an assessment or like to check on to consult their mental well-being? Yeah.
Well, this is a tough question because in different places you have different perspectives and different opinions. But I think with the onset of how life is in Malaysia today, I think the first thing is we have lots of online services and teleservices and phone lines, hotlines. So if somebody is not sure or feeling bad in yourself and not comfortable and not certain, sometimes when they tell their family members, the family members don't get it, and some people just say, oh, just take a day off, or, it'll get better. Or they might just say something, or they might actually say something even worse that make you feel worse. So when you're not sure, it's good to maybe pick up the phone. That's the fastest and the first line. Some places use phones, some places use text. You can text it to a number. Some organizations, NGOs have got Facebook Messenger. You can send in a PM message on the side, and I think many of these are going on out there. And they are actually training first responders, and I think a lot of first responder training helps people to begin to understand and listen quite quickly to we say, using your rule of thumb, do a quick gauge and see how severe is the situation of a person, and from there then to see whether this person would benefit from just having somebody to talk to. And if they do, then yes, you can continue on talking on the phone or chatting on the side. um, as much as it still helps, it's less helpful than if you actually went to see someone in person. So just like what you're talking about, online classes versus in person, and that there's a pro and a con. There's value to everything, but the degree of the value increases when we are able to be face to face versus virtually. But virtually with video is definitely better than just sound of somebody's voice. And sound of somebody's voice is still definitely better than just typing in the chat somewhere. So there are different levels of the first responder status in terms of a quick assessment. Then the question would be to assess and see the severity of something. And if at first responder level not clear, generally to get an assessment, the person to go to would be people who are trained in psychology. So psychological assessments. And mostly these are clinical psychologists. If it's a developmental type problem, then you have the developmental psychologists or the educational psychologists who also do some degree of assessments. But when it's mental health related, the tie-in is more with clinical psychologists, because clinical psychologists training in the background is to develop assessments as well as to give assessments and do analysis of results and things like this, and to be able to weave into putting what comes up from an assessment in objective results with the person's life experiences to see whether it matches into certain types of diagnostic criteria. Now, some people, if you were living in the West, this is a standard. It's just like if you went to the doctor will not treat you until they ask you to take a blood test. And then once you got your blood test results, then they will assess from there and then decide to go from there. So this is how it would happen in a hospital and things like that. So generally in the field of mental health and psychology, it's also like this, that most people who seem to be something not right, then they are given a test, psychological tests, and then from the test, the assessments are done, and then from there, they're advised to go next. If they need medical support for medication, then they're sent to a psychiatrist, and then the psychiatrist would, work from there with medication. So when you think of that whole range, That's how generally it's supposed to happen. But we live in Malaysia, and Malaysia is a little bit different. I think Asian countries, or the less developed countries, have had less support from counseling, psychology, and so medical world was very much a way that everybody went. And so it was seen from a medical perspective, this idea of crazy or not crazy. And that's where crazy people were institutionalized, and stigma came from around there. But nobody saw the development of it, and that it still became part of a medical model. So we still function from a very strong medical model where most people would go to see a psychiatrist if they didn't go to a counselor first or a psychologist first. And the psychiatrist would listen to your story a little bit and kind of gauge and pick out some symptoms, and then come up with a diagnosis and then give you the medication accordingly from there. So of course, there are checklists to check the symptom levels and things like that. But generally, I'd say if somebody was not doing well, you could either just go to see a counselor first, because the counselor would have a general rule to see whether these are issues of normality, or these are issues that have a deeper, issue underlying. Or you could go see a psychologist. This is also fine. The psychologist goes deeper into clinical type assessments besides just the general, school-based or family-based kinds of issues, or work-based issues. And in the assessment level, then to begin to understand what would be kind of like a diagnosis. But I'm a person who doesn't like that word diagnosis because we come to a diagnostic quite quickly, and everybody wants a label quite quickly. And to me, it took many years to develop a person into that label, or into that quality of how they are. And we never know a person from just one time meeting, two times meeting, for a 1 hour session. I don't believe that we are able to gauge very quickly the diagnostic of what is really working in your mechanism that makes a person come to a place to give a clear diagnostic. I don't believe in this. So I believe that it takes some time to come to be in a connected relationship, understanding a person, and you begin to see the many angles and shades of a person to be able to come up with a diagnostic. But unfortunately, when we function from a medical model, then it just means if you pass all these checklists and criteria, then we would put you under a particular bundle, and therefore they move to treatment very quickly. And that's because from the medical model, it's about treating symptoms to minimize the symptoms or manage symptoms quickly, so that the person's kind of not feeling so out of themselves. A person can be needing medication to, stabilize in terms of they can't sleep, and so give them medication that helps them sleep. They're feeling too negative in their mind, or, mood is down, and give them a certain type of medication because it helps to balance and manage this part of themselves. So the aspect of treatment is very much medicalized. But the world of psychology of a person is much more than a medical perspective, and that takes a longer time in assessment. Okay, so this is a big overview in a sense. So I'd say the first responder would be your hotlines, and quickly going from there. And then the next would be looking out for counselors or psychologists, because as we start to talk, we are actually regulating our whole psychological mechanism within ourselves, what our makeup is like. And just the talking alone can help people to turn around. And the thing that we don't do enough is we don't talk enough. We don't share enough. We talk general things, but we don't talk how's my functioning inside. And that's the kind of talk that needs to happen, because as it happens, we become more aware, and then we regulate it, and then people start to get better from there. And half the time, that's enough. That's enough. But if the support in the environment is good, the person turns around much faster. But if the support keeps beating you down, then that kind of a talk makes it more difficult. That's when you need to think of safety and moving people out into safer environments if that toxic environment is too bad. So lots of this goes into assessment and diagnostic per se in that sense. Okay, so who wants to go next? Avzan, you
I
want to
think
say
Afsan,
something?
you can go
Raman?
next. Yeah.
Yes. Carrying on from what Dr. Valerie said, I am a certified mental health first aider, and the one thing that we are always told repeatedly is to listen, and listen. Because I think a lot of times we listen to solve a problem. We listen to fix, whereas I think we should listen to understand instead of trying to fix something. And as a mental health first aider, I cannot make any diagnosis. I can only assist someone in at least listening to what they have to say, helping them get the help that they want or the help that they need. And also, just like Dr. Valerie said, uh, healing, mental health healing is not just about medication. I am on medication, but I also learn to be more active physically because all these hormones things that I can never pronounce correctly. So yeah, it's about balancing the hormones and also the chemical in the brains. So I learn to be more active physically. I go for spiritual healing, and by spiritual healing I don't necessarily mean something to do with religion, because I know when I mean I faced it myself when I was in a depressive mode. Uh, there were people that said, it's because I have distanced myself from God. It's because I'm not praying enough. So yeah, so spiritual healing is not just about religious activities. Yes, I must say that can moving myself or closing a relationship with God, or getting closer to God is helps a lot because it helps strengthens my faith. But it is more than that. It's more than medication. It's a holistic. It needs a holistic approach, if you ask me, because uh, uh because life, just like life is never just about one thing. I think medication, healing is also not just about medication. It's about you taking responsibility for yourself. It's you recognizing when to be positive and when not to be positive, because toxic positivity is real, really, because sometimes it's just not okay to think positive all the time. You have to address the negative, then only you move forward towards the positive. So yes, diagnosis can at least help you at least know what to do, but it's just a starting point, and ultimately it's up to you. Like in my case, finding a life purpose helped me a lot. Helping others helped me heal faster and heal better, I guess.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Baban. Thank you so much, Doctor, for that amazing input. I particularly think that this question is very important and should be addressed because, like, diagnosis is definitely an important tool for young people, for teenagers, for them to know, and for them like to get engaged with the doctors, for them to get engaged with the therapists, the psychologists, to get advices on the treatment, and most importantly for them to avoid future health risk from I think in terms of the future health risk, it is like if we get diagnosed, if we know how to get diagnosed, then only we know the treatment that we should uptake in the future, right? And I think we've covered about mental health issue and how is it really important to be addressed and all. And I just want to echo one more solution-based question regarding the destigmatizing mental health issue in our community or like in our society, specifically in Malaysia. As we see for a fact that definitely society, or like definitely the community, we play such a huge, like such a big role in dismantling this issue. So one question is that what are some suggestions you have for talking about mental health conditions with people or like to those who still attach a stigma to these issues? Yeah, maybe Megan, you can go next.
Can I start? I can
Yeah,
say
definitely,
something.
doctor.
Yes.
Yes.
Actually, I'm seeing the comments around self-diagnosis as well, uh, because we are in information age with information overload, and there's so much information out there that tells us what we are and what we match and what looks like this and looks like that. And if I take you back to the years when I was a student, uh, learning on abnormal psychology, every time we hit a chapter and we talked the diagnosis and we went through all those signs and symptoms, I'd raise my hand and say to my lecturer, "Sir, that sounds like me." And then we'd go to the next topic and then I'd put up my hand, "Sir, that sounds like me too." And it seems like every illness or every abnormality out there sounded like me. And so I said, gee, I must be some real crazy wacko out there, that's come here. And the reality at the end of the day is everywhere we search and all information that we look for out there is always something that will look like me, because we are all human and we all have emotion and we all regulate in some way. We all have the ways of thinking. And so everything sounds similar. I could be this, I could be that. And diagnostics. And that's why I was saying it's not something you come to very quickly. It takes time to come to understand the real diagnosis. So you can manage symptoms sometimes here and there, but to really begin to understand what is going on, what makes a person this way or that way, it takes time. And that time is the relationship time being built. So when I think about what you're asking for in terms of how do we think forward in moving in this way, when we go out, how do we think of ourselves? And if we're always trying to fit ourselves into a box that says I'm abnormal in some way, then we're skewing our society towards more illness, negativity. But I'd rather say, if I'm looking at myself, what's unique? What makes me different? Because people who are an extremely moody, temperamental sorts are also quite highly creative people. They come up with amazing imagination. And so when you think about it, if you wanted to medicate that quality and numb it out, we're actually going to take away the talent and the gift behind that individual. And so, that there are people out there who invite us to say that we live in a world of difference. And if we are different, um, in the way we think, we feel, we behave, then there must be a uniqueness about that behavior that is calling some other aspect from me to you to say, how do we interact here? Rather than saying we all need to be clones and become looking the same, behaving the same, uniform people. But we are not uniform. We are diverse. We are different at many, many levels of our lives. And we need to look there to celebrate it. And make that shift happen in life. So when you're thinking about how do we move away from stigma or taking this away, we need to position this whole angle of the mental well-being of the person to say that there is something unique in us, and we mustn't say this is stable or unstable, but we take time to understand it, and then we take time to see and balance. And I think this will make us grow in the world, valuing differences and different abilities in that sense. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
so
thank
who's
you so
going?
much, Doctor.
Yeah.
Maybe Yeshua, do you want to go next? Or Kat? Anyone?
I can go next.
Yeah, Kat.
Okay, so thank you so much, Dr. Valerie, for addressing that, because I think I really agree with that. It's the same thing as I think it's very similar to neurodivergence and neurotypical. Just because they're doing something different, just because their people are different, and then people think that it's wrong. But yeah, so moving on to the questions the question that was asked basically was, what are some of the suggestions that I have when I talk to people who have stigma on mental health about mental health conditions. So I think Baban addressed it earlier, where I think the reason why people have this stigma is because of shame, right? Like we talked about that earlier. So I think the only way to get them to understand or talk about it is to provide a safe space, active listening, um, because I've conducted many events. So I'm a very firm believer in support groups, where these people say that they don't even want to join, or they're just there just to listen and stuff like that. But when they join, and then when they see other people talking about a certain issue or a certain mental illness, and then they'll slowly start opening up, and they feel like, wow, you know what, I can actually talk about this, like it's actually okay. No one's gonna shame me for it, there's nothing wrong with this. Everyone actually has it, it's just very well hidden because we're Asians, and stuff like that. Um, and and I think what Baban mentioned earlier was that, we are very quick to give solutions, and then that's natural, right? Because we're humans, we don't like conflict. Every time there's a problem, we just want to solve it. But not but like sometimes when we let it out, we don't want a solution. Sometimes I know a solution, like I know what I'm supposed to do, but I just want to like rant. And I think if we give that safe space, we listen properly, slowly but surely, I think people will start talking about mental health conditions. The safe space is so important. Make sure that it is, LGBTQ friendly. There's no one making condescending jokes and stuff like that. No one cuts off anyone when they're talking, and that everyone gets to share. Like in this forum, like how, everyone gets an equal space to share. Because sometimes in some spaces, a person dominates another and stuff like that. So I'm a firm believer in safe space when talking about mental health conditions. I think it facilitates the conversations a lot. Yeah, that's my opinion.
I totally agree with you, Kat. I feel safe space, that is the first thing ever every person should have. Not people with mental health issues. I'm pretty sure anyone, every single human being should have a safe space and a safe person to talk to. They have to open it up first, then we can address the issue. If they can't open it up, they keep bottling it up, it's not gonna end. It's gonna create more conflicts, more problems down the road. It's not gonna solve. You know what? A simple rant, like what do you say, like simple rant like for 5 minutes can literally change your whole day. You just have a problem, call a person that you trust, rant it out for 5 minutes continuously, right? It works out well. I totally agree with that. That's what I do usually when my friends are busy or whatsoever. When I call, right, you know what I do? I just gotta text them. I'm gonna like, bro, I'm WhatsApp you right now. I'm gonna write a lot of stuff. Please don't listen to whatever WhatsApp voice messages that I sent to. So you know what? I'm just gonna continuously write about like 20 voice messages just for him. So it's like I know he's not gonna listen to all of it, but I know that there's someone who is looking out for me. That is the most important thing. So back to the question, right? Okay, people with stigma. Okay, you know what? I feel that we have to educate them, telling them that, yeah, it is a thing. It is a real deal. It is not like it's not a thing that you just throw it off, brush it off your shoulders. Not that kind of thing. Mental health is a thing that you should give very much importance as you give it to a normal illness as well. I feel mental health requires as much as important as physical health. Both are equal. It's just what Dr. Valerie said. It's just two parts. It's a different part of your body, but it requires the utmost importance towards it. That is for sure. That I feel that is a statement should be written in every single person. Actually, it is a statement. You people should understand that. I think once they understand that statement, right, I'm pretty sure they are gonna change. They are gonna learn. They're gonna evolve. They're gonna make wonders. Actually, they just have to understand the statement where mental health is as important as physical health. When you like what you guys all say, when you have like a some kind of chest pain, obviously you're gonna go to the hospital because you're gonna be afraid it might be a heart attack, cardiac arrest, whatsoever. You are serious about it, or you have a shortness of breath. Oh, you're gonna have asthma, that kind of thing. You are serious about it. But why, when it comes to depression, when it comes to anxiety, panic attacks, and so on, why don't you want to go for a visit to a local counselor or your trusted person, your psychiatrist? Why don't you want to go? I know, like what Baban said, that in the government sector it's kind of slow, but getting a first consult, right, first opinion kind of makes it better. Because I always follow this rule, I know it's kind of like a dumb rule, but it's for me. It makes my life better. Like example, when I get works, courseworks, homeworks, or whatsoever, right? Even a work, any work, I just try my best to do the first line or like first part of it just a little bit. When you start it out, right, you'll have a thought in your mind telling that, oh, I have to get back towards it. I have to get back towards it. It kind of imprints in your mind itself. So yeah, that's what I feel. You just have to put a first step forward, safe space, first step forward, and imprint in your mind the statement where physical health and mental health both is important. You should not let one thing go, like let one thing go, take about the rest. No, don't bottle up feelings. You have a problem, just write it out. 5 minutes can literally change your whole day, to be precise. Yeah, that's all from me.
Afzan, you want to go next?
Yes. I think, but this is just my way of doing things, I guess, because I like to laugh. I love jokes. I love comedies. So one of the ways that I get people to talk about mental health issues is through humor. For example, when I'm in the office and okay, one of the symptoms that I experience is racing thoughts, and when that occurs, I talk fast because everything is going fast in my brain, so my mouth has just to move as fast as my brain, and I and my colleagues sometimes they joke about it. They say, "You're talking too fast. Have you taken your medication yet?" Things like that. And I know it sounds condescending to some people, but it helps me because it helps me not take my mental disorder too seriously. It is a serious matter, but I shouldn't let it control my life. I shouldn't make it the most serious thing in my life because it's just a part of me. It doesn't define who I am. And so and I do believe that different people experience uh mental health issues in different ways. They react to it in different ways. So there is no one standard way of talking about mental health issues to each other. So I guess it depends on your audience. It depends on the person you're talking to. Um, my way has always been humor, and yeah, it can be a bit tasteless at times, but it helps me. It helps me laugh at things. It helps me laugh at myself, and I think that is important. You have to learn to laugh at yourself, because when you take yourself too seriously, then that's when things tend to look bleak, and you tend to go down a lot faster that way, and I find humor helps, but that's just
Kathleen, you want to go next?
Yeah, yeah. I just want to add one more thing. Is that it's something that I hear very often, which is people will say, like, for example, if they feel sad and then they will deny it, or they'll be like, no, I cannot feel sad, or I cannot feel angry and stuff like that. And I like to share what my counselor shared with me before, which is like feelings are like hot and cold. You cannot Like for example, if I feel cold and I say I'm feeling cold, the other person cannot be like, "Ah, yeah, no need to feel cold. Stop feeling cold." Like you can't control that. I feel like a lot of people don't understand that, because some people tell you brush it off. But if you're hot and you're cold, you can't brush it off. So if it's an emotion like sadness or fear, anger, a lot of people label it as negative emotions, but really it's just emotions. It's just a feeling. There's no negative feeling. There's no positive feeling. So yeah, I just want to tell the audience, if the next time someone says to you to stop feeling sad or stop feeling angry, just tell them to, like, you put them in a frozen room and tell them to stop feeling cold and see how they will react. No, just kidding. Please don't do that. But yeah, just know that it's okay to feel things, and then you can reflect on it afterwards, like why did you feel that way and stuff like that. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on the questions asked. I believe that it has been such a fruitful discussion, but due to time constraint, we'll have to move on to our Q&A session now. Maybe Sarah, you can help me sharing the screen for Slido. All right, thank you so much. Okay, so the first question here, what do you think about stress being more prevalent nowadays due to the notion of one being to be an all-rounder and stretch oneself thin to achieve success? Anyone, do you want to take the question?
Okay. Is it okay if I continue with this?
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? The person who typed this, thanks for that. You know why? Uh, it is close to a personal question to me, because I had to cover my studies at the same time with my co-curriculum during my school days, to be precise, where there was a moment in time where I didn't attend school for like close to 2 months, 3 months, if I'm not mistaken. Attend school in the meaning of, it's not Pontek Sekolah. It's because I'm representing school for a lot of competition and so on. It's like a continuous close to 3 months. So at that moment, right, you're gonna have stress from your school because you're not gonna get any information, like not any information. You're gonna get information, but not the total information from your teachers, and you have a lot to cover, and you're very tired from your activity, and you just have to. And plus, when you come back home, you have some certain works to do. You have to do help your parents with your house chores and everything. So it is very hard, and you are pressured to the max, to be honest. You just at that moment, right, you just have to have a person to rely to, a person where you can lean yourself against, actually. At moments, yes, when you go more towards your co-curriculum stuff and you let go of your academic stuff, there are things, and you feel tired, you don't have social life kind of things. It's just what you have to sacrifice something in order to gain something. So when it came to me, I sacrificed my social life in order to get sleep. So you have to, it's just what you just have to juggle through things, but you can achieve success. Do not worry. Whatever happens, just remember that whatever seeds you sow now, you can reap towards the end. You just have to have a safe place and a person that you can rely to, so you can talk things out, get yourself together, and always stay together. The most important thing here, do not do not let go of your strength, your hope and your strength. Whatever happens, those two, I feel those two words are very strong words, strength and hope. It can, how do I say, if you give enough hope, you can even, those days they used to, you give enough hope, you can even revive a person. So those two words are really strong words. Always imprint that to yourself and make yourself together with the word. Always hope for a better and a great thing, great future to come towards you. Don't always hope for a negative kind of thing. It doesn't work out well. Don't think about like worst case scenarios, that kind of thing. Always hope that today is bad, but tomorrow is better, and the day after is gonna be way better. It's gonna be the best. Just think in a positive note, and you will get through it. yeah, that's all from me.
Thanks, Yeshua. I think I can also relate to this question, but I think we are. I don't know. I don't know whether it's a current generation thing or what, but I feel like we're quite pressured to be good at everything, because competition is very high. Like I think the most basic example is like, oh, now everyone has a degree. I think in the next 2 years, if you have a degree, it's not enough. You need to have a master's. You want to become cashier, you need masters. Like I think it's a thing now. But I just want to tell everyone to remember to get rest, to draw a line. When you feel like you can't cope, you should draw a line. Like, you know what, I think this is enough. Because what I realized after going for counseling is that when I was an all rounder, I wasn't very happy, and I realized that I was only doing it for to actually distract myself from something else. So I think it's very important for us to reflect back and see, like, am I doing this because I really want to do it, because I enjoy all these activities and stuff like that, or is it just because I fear that I'll be left out? I fear that if I don't do this, I'm not good enough, stuff like that. So, and then once you like reflect on it, and then you come back and think again whether it's worth it. And if you really like it, then yeah, do it. If you don't, then don't do it. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
I, I
Thank you
have
so
I,
much.
I have two
Yeah,
cents
Doctor,
to
you can go.
I have 2 cents to add to this, because this is an interesting question. And my question to the question is, how do you define success? Because if your definition of success in terms of all-rounder is based on what other people's expectation of you are, then that's not success. That will lead you to fail, and that will lead you to mental breakdown. But if you define success in relation to your strengths, yourself, your capabilities, and shining in the world with what you have to offer, then there is no limit to that success. So it's a matter of how you define it. And when you do what you love, there is no stress. You will have positive stress going with you forward, and the sky is your limit. So I throw the question back: how you define success?
Yeah, can I go briefly? This is a very fast one.
Yeah,
So, like,
right.
thank you, doctor, for adding that question, because this was what I experienced last time when I was in college, all the way, actually, high school to college. So, for my family, right, I'm the only girl in my family, and everyone else, like my cousins, everyone, they are guys. So, what happens is that there's this sort of like a very high standard when it comes to girls. It's like, when you're young, and maybe the guy cousins that you have are being selfish, and then what happened is, and then it doesn't help when I'm the oldest also. So I always had this expectation to be like, oh, the best Jie. So Jie is like older sister in Chinese. So what happened was, I always, when I grew up, I always wanted to like prove myself worth to people, and that was also because I think my self-worth was very based on what people thought of me. So, for example, studies, I would do really, really hard. I would study like so hard to get like really good results, and I did, right. And that was my pedestal lah, all the way up to college. So I was very happy. I received like a scholarship to college and stuff like that. But then what happened was when I lost it, and that really caused like a really bad like I was really down, and I had no one to talk to. So at that time I was also in a relationship, and that didn't went well. So what happened was, my friends were his friends, but then they went to him, so I didn't have friends, and I lost my scholarship actually because my results didn't hit the target. So at that time it was really, really bad. And then what I realized as I reflected and as I got older is that my self-worth is based on what people thought of me, so I kind of let them dictate how I would live my life. And I think that's quite toxic lah. And when I came to uni, I am very grateful to actually have a really good friends who actually reach out to me and are really, really concerned when it came to my mental health. And yeah, a lot of things were going on during college. I was like just a very confused teenager. But then now I'm like so much better. I have really good friends, and they also kind of restored my confidence back in faith. And I think that is what kept me going actually for the longest time. So yeah, actually that's all from me. Back to you, Isaac.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Megan. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your very amazing thoughts and also personal experiences. Uh, we have another interesting question here. Are the people who have mental illness just people who fall to fit into society's idea of a normal person? Maybe, Baban, you can go first.
Well, I was abnormal even before I got even before I had bipolar disorder because think I think in a way everybody has something that doesn't fit into what
Mhm.
society's idea of what normal is. I think the only kind of normal that you have to be is your kind of normal, not what everybody else thinks is normal. Um, like me, I'm 40 years old and I'm still very much obsessed with pink and everything that glitters. So, and that is not really normal per se for people my age, but that's me and I'm sticking with it and I'm not going to apologize for being myself. So yeah, I don't think that just because somebody is different, it doesn't mean that he or she or they have a mental disorder. Um, it I think it is just our way of because we love labels, I guess, and it's easier to put somebody that seem different in the mental disorder box rather than appreciating that person's uniqueness and individuality. So no, I don't think that just because somebody is different, it doesn't mean that that person has a mental illness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Okay, I think we'll move on to another questions. What are some of the best ways to reach out to young children and all adolescents, teenagers especially, to erase the stigma of mental health? I think this one you can answer this in terms of tangible or also intangible approaches. Anyone want to go first?
I
Maybe
can.
doctor? Yeah,
I
I can,
yeah.
yes. I think if we're looking to see what is it to do, I think people who are creative can come up with more programs for children, cartoons, in which there are scenes that show there is nothing wrong with going to see somebody when there's a bit of discomfort or conflict in the home, and the conflict takes people to get support. I think when you have images like this around, that there is nothing wrong about getting help in whatever manner, I think we can change mindsets and introduce new ways. Similarly, through school and education, having programs where we talk about mental health. You know, we all have a brain, and therefore we all have a mental faculty, and therefore that mental faculty has a sliding scale that will say you can go high, you can go low, you can go left, right. We all have it. It's not only to one type of person or another type of look, or you know and it when we talk about people needing to fit, it doesn't fit. It's about nobody is going to fit into somebody else's model. Nobody. And so our ways of doing things, so if we begin to introduce this through schools, is good. Talk forums like this is very helpful. I think a lot of education is trying to reach out to even the parent populations to say, don't be afraid. That when your child says, I have stomach ache and I don't want to go to school, you don't take them to the doctor, you take them to the counselor. This kind of an approach needs to be changing, where the first line of assessment is not the medical doctor, but the counselor. If people had this in mind, then the counselor would assess whether the problem is more mental health related, or stress related, rather than medical related. Because now when the child goes to the doctor, they give you something to rest and what have you, but they never tell the parent or the child go see the counselor, unfortunately, because more than 80% of most people who go to the doctor actually should be seeing the counselor in reality, counselor, psychologist, and go through some kind of de-stressing. um, so I think that if we want to reach more people, then the process that we need to take, if we work in an organization, most of the time, if you don't feel well, they say you have to go to the doctor first, the GP doctor first, and then they will give you a referral to the next level. I think that that should change, that the first line is go see the counselor first, and then the counselor will decide whether you go to the doctor or who you go to see from there. And so the levels that need to be put in place. And I think if we do something like this in implementing something like this, then we can reach the children and remove that factor of stigma, because what we're then saying is we all have stress and we all have impact of stress. And if we don't have avenues to de-stress, which often can happen, as Joshua is saying, in that safe space, which is that counseling space that is created, then this is something that we need to instill much more. And if we can do that, then we are encouraging people to follow a particular line and change the way we are angling things as it is today. But I think the world of creativity can actually inject good ideas in the form of TikTok and and videos and all these great things young people are into these days, because you introduce ideas and change mindsets from the young. They are the future that will make the changes happen, not the old politicians that we have in the world today. It's not going that direction. Yes.
Yes, I think Megan, you can go first before Kathia.
Yes, yes. So for me, I think I come from a different like perspective. So for me, cause I'm from Malacca, but then I have families at other states as well. So predominantly Seremban. So what happens is when I go back, I usually I'm involved in a lot of youth and children ministry, but in church. So what happens is and I'm also a part-time teacher last time. So being put in this position, right, it's very easy to actually drop a simple question on mental health with the kids or with the teenagers. So I think that is what I usually do. Like for example, in camps or the place that I taught in. So for example, Kumon. So I taught in Kumon before, and then I have this really cute students because I teach like really young kids, and then they will come in and sometimes they will look sad. And then I will just do a mental health check in and be like how are you today and stuff like that. And sometimes they will overshare, which is cute as well. But then I think essentially what we want to do is to really encourage this kind of conversations among the young people, and also for the older teens, right? Sometimes so it's a build up, lah. So sometimes we ask like, how are you guys feeling today, and then it will build up to how have your mental health been, something like that. So for the older teenagers, they will some of them are quite inquisitive. So it's not like everyone has this stigma, they actually want to know more, that kind of thing. But I think what's encouraging is that sometimes we get them to think that why is that still a taboo, or why is that still a stigma? And then when they think about it, right, then they will realize that actually there's no shame in actually sharing. And then when this happens, then they talk to their friends, so it's like a snowball effect, and then they continue this conversation with their friends. So I think for me lah, and from the society that I'm from, this is how me and I think my sister also, because she's also volunteering in youth and children ministry, so that's what we usually do to teenagers and kids. So I think that's my side of the story. But Kathy can go next.
Yeah, Kat. Oh yeah, I think Yeshua can go first. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Isaac. Okay, Megan, I totally agree with that. But you know what? For my what I felt, because I also teach some kids here and there, so especially on adolescent and young children, right? I feel the word trust, right, plays a big role in this. when you trust the person, then only the children will start opening up, and especially teenagers like us. Okay lah. Okay, I'm 21. I'm not teenager anymore, but it's okay. Teenager like us, we start opening up. The only thing is what you need to maintain the trust. You have to build up. It doesn't come overnight. It doesn't come over a day. Years and years of time, effort, and all. You need time. But I feel that the person like young, especially young children, right? Their minds are, how do I say? It's like a sponge. They absorb every single thing. It's just what how do I say? My cousin, she's just five, oh 6 when she's 6 now. Usually, you know what? I trim my own hair. I cut my own hair because I know how to cut, shave, and all. So I do it usually myself. Why waste money doing for barbers? So after I mentioned that to my cousin, right? I didn't mention. It was just a normal family talk with my aunties and all. After my cousin heard that, she went on like cut. She's a girl, so she cut all of her front hair. It's like the fringe is not like this. It's like something like this. So it really looked devastating. And when we asked her, like, wait, why did you do that? She said, like, no, like, Anna, like, he did that. I'm like, oh, okay. Don't tell me an account, because I said what I did, but it wasn't me. So I feel like they are sponge. They absorb whatever we do actually. Even a simple conversation at home, when they can really understand what is going through, they absorb that kind of things. So I feel that the best ways are to build trust, especially parents. Parents, I'm grateful with my parents. They are very understanding. They really give importance to my mental health. Even when I'm depressed or anything, I'm just gonna give a call, and they'll be like, they are staying in KL, and Kedah is kind of far, and they'll be like, do you really want me to come? If you want, I come right now. So they really take the initiative to take care of my mental health. With that, I'm really blessed for that. So the first things first is trust. I feel that you have to build up a good trust with your parents, with your children, or children with your parents. You know what? I feel this doesn't only revolve on parents alone, on children as well. Because some of the children, right, they don't tend to open up to parents. They have to actually some of the parents, they won't know all sorts of stuff. Children should actually educate their parents, because at this moment everything is in your fingertips. For our teenagers, so they actually have to educate their parents, telling that this is actually real. We have to really consider this, that. I feel it's kind of mutual relationship where both of us have to self teach each other and self understand as well. So I feel trust plays a really big role, and not only parents, teenagers, young adults, everyone should also teach each other. Because even when I was teaching small kids, right, you know what? I learn every single day a new stuff. I couldn't even how do I say? Even out of curiosity, like, okay, you can. It's like, you know what? They are doing some kind of crazy stuff which you don't even expect that thing to happen. So it works wonders. You just have to. I feel you just have to work on the trust, and second of all, teach each other, understand each other, have a good mutual understanding where you can talk with each other. Yeah, that's all from me. Kat?
Moderator, do you want to? So is it
Yeah,
the
I
same
think
question
Kathy
or
can.
not question?
The same question. Yeah, you can go first.
Same question. All right. So basically, I'm representing Kau Kita, right? So Kau Kita literally just does this stuff. So we create content and modules for specifically only teenagers, because we realize that a lot of mental health initiatives are for youths, and that's good. It's definitely good, but there's no one organization that specifically caters for teenagers. So we decided to do this, and what we do is that we just create a whole bunch of activities, because like even ourselves, we don't uh cannot stay in focus when we like listen to talks, right? So these are like interactive activities that teenagers do. So we curate this content, this module, and then we consult with counselors, and then we execute it. And usually usually I don't know what I was expecting from teenagers, but I was very surprised that a lot of them are very, for the lack of better word, woke. Like they are very aware of
Mhm.
this mental health things, and they were very nice. They were very they're willing to share and everything. They just needed the space. They just needed a platform. But once we gave it to them, everything just flowed smoothly. And there were a few teens who did not know certain terms and stuff like that. But once we educate them, they really did know. That's why Kawakita also um, wants to collaborate with several schools to start like having these modules as like a continuous thing, so that we can do after school and stuff like that. That's for teenagers. For youths, in particular, especially university students. So I also co-founded this other organization called Connect, and the reason why it was co-founded is because we had a trigger warning suicide. We had a suicide case in our university, and the administration did not want to talk about it. The university does not want to talk about it. It's like if you talk about it, then everyone was very hush hush about it, and then the lecturers weren't informed on how to address these issues if students were to talk about it. So we started a support group where like because counselors are great, right? We also have school counselors in schools, but there's also issues where people say that school counselors sometimes share the students' problems to other students or other teachers, and then and it's the same goes with university counseling and stuff. Like university counseling is more of like people have the taboo, the stigma to go and like talk, and they're very ashamed of that. So what we do is like provide a support system. It's peer support. I think that's like very important, peer support, because you're more comfortable talking to people around your age. You feel like they can relate more. So I think that's like the best ways to let youths and young people to start talking about it. Maybe start from a individual one-on-one conversation, listen to the friend, to the person, and then if they're interested, then you can suggest them to go for counseling. Because if you straight ask them to go for counseling, they might get really scared. Yeah. So yeah, that's all from.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rayong, for that wonderful sharing. I think one last question to encapsulate this session. What do you hope to see in dismantling the stereotypes of mental health issues in the near future? Maybe everyone can briefly elucidate their hopes for the future generation. Yeah, we can start off with maybe Baban, you can go first.
Um, I actually hope to see more people like me who have mental condition to come out and tell your story, because I think stories are powerful. Stories inspire people. So when you bring your story out in the open, other people will not feel like they're alone. They know that there's someone out there who's like them, who's experiencing something the same, along the same line that they are experiencing. And I think that is very, very important. So because when you put yourself out there and you tell your story, you yourself are basically breaking stereotypes. You are demonstrating to the world, to other people, that hey, your idea of somebody with a mental illness is wrong, because I am living proof that somebody with a mental illness, mental disorder, mental condition, what have you, I am living proof that somebody in that condition can have a successful career, can have meaningful relationships, can live a relatively normal life. So yes, what I hope is for more people like me to share their stories, because stories are powerful. That's all from me.
Dr.
I can
Valerie, you want to go
I can
next?
go next.
Yeah.
Yes. I'd like to see that mental health issues do not become discriminating factors, whether it be in schools or in workplaces or in joining clubs and activities, that we become more inclusive society of welcoming differences. Um, in because people are afraid to acknowledge that they are struggling with something and getting treatment for it, And this becomes a discriminating factor to get a job, to enter certain schools, or certain courses. They'll say, oh, this is too stressful for you, and create limitations for people. So I'd like to see that we are able to remove this discriminating factor with illness, and we do not discriminate people now who are in wheelchairs and who don't have sight or hearing, differently able people, but we are still discriminating against people with mental health issues, in that sense. So moving forward, yeah, I think all your ideas and whatever all of you have said is really quite very good, very necessary in the world today. Yeah. So that's all from me.
Yep. Maybe Kat Leah, you want to go next?
For me, I think it would be, I don't know, I'm very into this whole Section 309 thing. But thank God, like recently, they said that they said that it was paused, but still there are people who are still in jail because of like who are like still currently in jail, and there's nothing they didn't do anything about that, and I think it's a huge step, but there's still like a long way to go for us to abolish the law, or even like create a moratorium for all these people in need. Um, yeah, so that's my hope. With that, I also hope that the future generation, like continues to talk about mental illnesses and realize that there's no taboo in speaking up. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay. You know what? I agree with what all of you guys say. I feel, but one thing's for sure. We are coming out of the cocoon, like kind of the shell. We are coming out. That's one thing for sure. It's just what baby steps all the way. You can't take a giant leap, but baby steps. You have to crawl, walk, run, jump, that kind of thing. So I feel that it is really great that we are breaking out. We are talking more about it. But you know what? I'm pretty sure even 5 years ago, I'm pretty sure forums like this, events like this wouldn't have existed much. So now I'm pretty sure every single week, close to I think every single week there must be some kind of mental health forum to help people out, to educate people and so on. So I feel we are going towards the right direction. So we just go with it. Slow, yeah, we just go with it. Baby steps all the way. That's what I feel.
Yeah, for me, I completely resonate with everyone who just shared just now. I think that, when, or we just want to achieve the utopia, right, of a very inclusive and more loving Malaysia, but it still will take some time. I think for me, what I really hope is that I want my children, because I want children, to really grow up in a Malaysia that is more, yeah, it's more inclusive, they're more inclusive, more accepting, more loving when it comes to people who are experiencing mental health conditions. And also that every good Malaysian here would be able to have this privilege to be able to receive adequate treatment, without prejudice, without discrimination, so that we can also all live life to the fullest. And I think before ending also, right, I want to remind all of us here that mental health is our fundamental right as defined by WHO. And, shout out to everyone who attended this session today. Thank you for taking the first step to be involved in this conversation. Just life is very precious, guys, and we all deserve the right to actually thrive and live life to the fullest by first maybe owning up to our own mental health. So take the first step, take care of your mental health, guys, and also take care. So that's all from me. Back to you, Isaac.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of the speakers. Thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed this session so much, and I've learned a lot from the panels. I think this is the end of our session, so I'll pass the floor to our Mr. MC. Over to you, Chris.
Hey, wow, that was mean, that was truly inspiring. Like wow, I can't even like put all that into a nutshell. That was just amazing. Um, but yeah, thank you so much to Aizat and the speakers for that amazing discussion on mental health. Personally, I really loved how everyone shared their experiences and the importance of talking in maintaining our mental well-being, be it talking to oneself, to someone else, or even to a psychologist. I can definitely relate with how talking really goes a long way, and just how having someone listen to you can really help you with any thoughts you may be having. I mean, I'm just totally lost for words. um, that was truly, truly inspiring, and I've definitely learned a lot from what has just been discussed. I really hope our audience feels the same way and is able to resonate with everyone's message. Um, that was really insightful, but I'm afraid that we will have to move on to the last segment of our event for today. So before we move on to the closing remarks, we will be having another round of lucky draw. So okay, let's get the names in. Okay, let me take a look. All right, it's generating. The wheels are turning. The wheels are turning. All right. Hey, we have another set of lucky draw winners. Oh my. Okay. I can't disclose it now, but if you guys want to find out if you have won, do follow us on Instagram at Charisma Movement and keep an eye out for our stories. Yup, they will be posted shortly. So be patient. It will be there. And yeah, the lucky draw winners will be walking away with 50 ringgit in Shopee vouchers. So that is some sweet bragging rights. Super duper cool. Okay, so yeah, we have come to the end of our event for today. So before you leave, I would like to thank you very much for your active participation and engagement in this forum. I would also like to express my utmost appreciation for all the speakers and organizations that have joined us here today. Your discussions were truly engaging and hopefully have left an impact on all of our viewers. Well, this marks the end of day one for No Holdbacks. I hope you have enjoyed the program, and we look forward to seeing you with us tomorrow for our sessions on invisible illnesses and sexual and women's health. See you guys then. Thank you.